Waffle House is a chain of restaurants unlike any other. They become almost like a cultural icon in the South. When we look at the map of their locations, it's clear that anyone living in the Southeast likely knows all about this place. Georgia specifically, the state in which they started, contains around 400 of their almost 2,000 locations. But as you work your way farther from the Southeast, your likelihood of knowing about them becomes lower and lower, which is a shame because these are some pretty tasty waffles, and millions of people in those areas of the country have no practical way of getting them. It truly is a Southern thing. I would argue one of the most successful. They have been estimated to have over $1 billion in sales each year, which would qualify them to be one of the biggest chains in the country. Unfortunately, their financial information has been famously secretive, but in 2005, they did claim to use 2% of all eggs produced in the United States. So for today, I'm excited to talk about Waffle House, taking a look back at their history while identifying what I believe to be some of the biggest reasons behind their growth and success. Starting at the very beginning with the two founders named Joe Rogers Sr. and Tom Forkner, who turned out to be such a perfect pair to start their own restaurant. Joe Rogers served in the Army as a pilot during World War II. When he returned home, he had 2 children to support, so he passed on utilizing the GI Bill to go to college and instead found a job as a short order cook. It wasn't long before he worked his way up to a regional manager position for a chain of diners called Toddle House that no longer exists. He was always interested in obtaining some equity in that restaurant, so he would be the partial owner. Well, in 1955, that was looking unlikely, so he set out to start his own restaurant. Tom Forkner enters the story because he was a real estate agent who happened to be a friend of Rogers because he had actually sold him a house a few years earlier. So the two of them got together to open the first ever Waffle House in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. And I say it was a great pair because Forkner had the real estate and financial background while Rogers knew how to manage a restaurant. They shared a similar vision for it that obviously proved to be successful for almost 70 years now. My next reason behind that success is the simplicity, because you would have a hard time finding many businesses that have changed so little since 1955. Just look at that name, Waffle House. How could it possibly be any more straightforward? In the beginning, they wanted to emphasize waffles on their menu because that was their highest margin item. That's where they would make most of their money. By the way, there were only 16 items on that original menu, and all things considered, it has not changed all that much since. It is still very basic and straightforward, especially when you compare it to some of their main competitors, like IHOP. I'm just saying, you are not going to find flavored syrups or anything resembling the Rooty Tooty Fresh and Fruity over at Waffle House. But another motive for emphasizing the waffles was to try and make them stand out from competing drive-thru and carry-out places. Here, that's pushing me into the next reason behind their success, which is strategic placement. In the 1950s, car culture was really becoming a thing. It seemed like everyone was buying a car, new roads were being built everywhere, and there was a bunch of fast food restaurants trying to take advantage of it by establishing drive-thrus and carry-out services. Waffle House was trying to take advantage of it in a bit of a different way. They were building their new restaurants alongside those interstates, but they felt that they could stand out from the others by being one of the few where you have to sit down and eat inside. Since waffles are a food where you typically have to sit down and eat them inside, they're a little fragile to try and transport. They felt that having the word in their name would help convey how they were different. And yet another aspect of that would be their yellow theme. If you go to a Waffle House, be prepared to see so much yellow. It's on the signs, on the building, oftentimes throughout the inside of the restaurant. It gives them a recognizable theme, but it's also effective in capturing everyone's attention. Truly, what is more eye-catching than the color yellow? You're driving down the highway, see that bright yellow sign out of the corner of your eye, and all of a sudden, some waffles are sounding pretty tasty. That one's a little self-explanatory, so another reason behind their success would be the fact that they are always open. I'm talking about all day, every day, including holidays, and it has been that way since the very beginning. We have to remember that back in 1955, it was almost unheard of to stay open for 24 hours. In fact, there was only one other restaurant in all of Atlanta that did the same thing. So even though there may have been fewer potential customers at night, they were attracting a much higher percentage of them. According to co-founder Joe Rogers, the night business determines whether we have sales enough to be profitable. He claims that one of the reasons the Waffle House House concept works so effectively in the South is because the warmer weather helps keep everyone more active at night, as opposed to the North where everything just kind of shuts down. Here, they are so dedicated to never closing that even their executives are expected to work during the holidays. So I would say that being a reliable presence that late night travelers and whoever else is up at those hours can count on being open no matter what has attracted plenty of business over the years. My next reason behind their success would be the fact that they have managed to remain under tight family control. For the most part, Waffle House has been privately owned and operated by the same families. In 1973, Joe Rogers Jr. took control of things as the company's president and held that position for the next 40 years, and even still remains chairman of the board. Even the two founders have remained with the company in different ways, I believe until their deaths when they were 97 and 98 years old. Oddly enough, Rogers died in March of 2017 and Faulkner died in April of 2017. And you might be thinking that it's really difficult for a company to remain private but still expand in the way that they have. You know, at some point you would expect them to raise money through a public stock offering or by taking out loans, but Waffle House has, impressively, been able to avoid all of that. The main way they've grown is my next reason on the list: franchising. It is a common way to do it in their industry that really started becoming popular around 1960. So that year, when they had only 4 locations all around the Atlanta area, they saw the trend of what was happening around them and opened their first franchise location. That right there is where things started picking up steam, opening more than 20 new restaurants throughout the 1960s, and that just kept accelerating as time continued. From what I can tell, they have been really selective when choosing the franchisees who would operate them, not even leaving it open to the public, so that has helped them maintain their standards and keep everything consistent between different locations. Alright, here's a couple of quicker ones. How about their quality? I think most would agree that the quality of food that you get at Waffle House is pretty decent considering the price. They tend to stick to the more popular name brand stuff like Heinz or Minute Maid because it's more familiar to people and they believe it's worth the extra cost to bring that quality up a little bit. Their original slogan was "Good Food Fast," showing that quality has been a long time concern, but also their speed. They are known for their fast service. Let me know if you've ever ordered anything at Waffle House and just been shocked at how fast it was ready. Being fast was so important to them that up until 2006, they wouldn't accept credit or debit cards from their customers because it felt it would slow things down. Not surprisingly, that became an issue because you needed to have cash to eat there, which by that time wasn't as common as it once was. They even tried installing ATM machines in some of the restaurants so people could access their cash, but it ultimately just made more sense to take a little bit more time with their transactions. Okay, back to the list. My 10th and final reason behind the success of Waffle House has to do with the environment that they create. There are so many parts to this, but ultimately the main goal is to create the sense of friendliness and southern hospitality, this blue-collar atmosphere that promotes conversation that just makes everyone feel welcome. As Joe Rogers Sr. liked to say, "We aren't in the food business, we are in the people business." And he also said, "Our job is to make people feel better because they ate with us." I've kind of already mentioned some of the ways they do that in my previous reasons, but I want to mention a few more here, like the layout. You can usually tell that you are in a Waffle House just based on the way things are set up. There's the counter that makes it easy to talk to everybody, and you can see the grill and everything else that's going on back there. It tries to be more like one big communal setting rather than being sectioned off like you might see from most of their competitors. Another aspect of the environment that I want to mention would be the jukebox. I don't know of any other restaurant chain where you could still expect to find a jukebox. In the 1980s, they even established a record label that produces songs to be played in those jukeboxes. The songs are mostly food or restaurant themed. I've actually listened to quite a few of them at this point, and my review is that they're mostly pretty lame, but somehow in a catchy, entertaining way. I don't know. But doing all these things to try to create such a friendly environment has helped produce some loyal customers that tell other people about Waffle House. Word-of-mouth advertising has been effective and helped them avoid paying traditional advertising. The final thing I feel I should mention about the environment of Waffle House is that it may not have been friendly in everyone's experience, and what I'm referring to here is a long line of lawsuits and accusations involving racism. Just a few notable examples would be in 1984, a white female alleged she was fired from Waffle House for marrying a black man. In 2002, an interracial couple filed a lawsuit claiming that the staff refused to serve them. In 2005, a black family claimed that a Waffle House waitress told them that they didn't serve black people. In 2014, they were sued by a former black employee who didn't feel he was being treated equally while working there. Again, these are just a few examples. There are so many more accusations along the same lines. The stance of Waffle House has pretty much been to deny all of it. Joe Rogers Sr. has even given examples examples of how they were helping the civil rights movement back in the 50s and 60s. It's a complicated issue with opposing sides, so I encourage you to look further into it so you can form your own opinions. For now, I just want to mention that Waffle House has maintained a certain level of success despite this negative reputation. Let me know in the comments, have you ever been to Waffle House? Given their geographic reach, I would imagine that maybe half of the viewers have been there. And if you have been there, what do you think of it? Are my reasons behind their success accurate, or do you have something to add or subtract from it? And how do they compare to their main competitors like IHOP or Denny's? And any other thoughts you have about the famous Waffle House, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.